Have you seen her? Ain't she great? She's something you'll appreciate. I'm sure you understand just what I mean. Everybody, everywhere, is falling for her now. I'm speaking of the new Ford, and boy, it's sure a wow. Lay off, people, lay off, folks. None of your sarcastic jokes. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. Not a rattle, not a bit. Lizzie now has lots of it. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. There's everything inside her now except a kitchen sink, a mirror, and a powder puff, a shower bath, I think. I'll bet my life that this Miss Ford will live as long as Fanny Ward. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. Now, you remember Lizzie, how she used to run before? Going 15 miles an hour, she would lose a door. When she was doing 20, remember how you'd feel? At 35 and 40, she almost lost a wheel. At 45 and 50...
This is a photo from T-Clinic last year when it snowed. We took Cash, who's a good friend of mine who is at the program here. We drove his Marmor around and then it broke. But Cash is a pre-war enthusiast. He has two Model Ts, the green one and the black one back there, as well as a Model A and a Marmon. And we were hanging out at lunch, and we were like, Cash, you have these cars, but like, do they even exist? They're in Colorado. How do we know they even have them? We want to see them in McPherson. How are we going to get them there? Well, they're cars they're supposed to drive. What if we drive them here? So that's kind of how it all started, and somehow we pressured him into letting us take this really fun spring break trip with him. So this is in Fleming, Colorado, which was our beginning point and where Cash is from. This is his little shed, which had all three cars that we took back with us tucked in it. So me and Cash and another person went up early, a couple days early before the rest of our group, to get the cars unstuck and prepped for the trip. So first I'll tell you about the prep we did and the cars. Intro to the cars. This is the 1928 Model A Sport Coupe that Cash bought from a local enthusiast. It's a nicely restored car done in the 80s and 90s, I believe. This is a picture of that 1926 Model T when Cash's grandfather owned it before he sold it. And the really cool thing about that car is Cash's great-grandfather owned a dealer in Fleming, Colorado, and he sold that car. You can see the Fleming, Colorado tag in the car. It's super cool. That's a picture of the dealer when it got a new load of Model A's in. So, and then this is a picture of the car on a trailer in front of where that dealer used to be. I thought it was really cool that we could go there and see where it was. So that's the 26. It drove the whole way. And then the other car is the 1915 Model T. This is how Cash had it. He bought it before college. He didn't really have time to work on it. It's a mostly original 1915 Model T. And when we got to it, it hadn't been running yet, and it needed tires, and it needed a bunch of work. So we loaded it up on the trailer at Cash's house and then brought it over to where Cash used to work, which is in a lawnmower dealer in the Fleming area. And we brought all the cars there to have a nice concrete floor, a nice heated shop that we could work on and get them ready. We started by doing oil changes on the cars, and I'm here to say we just had a great talk about all the things you should do when you're preparing for a long tour, and we did none of them. We did an oil change, and that was about it. We made sure the cars ran. I learned how to drive a Model T for the first time, and we were like, okay, let's do it. This is me in the rumble seat of the Model A, just doing a quick shakedown run, which, as it turned out, proved nothing, because the A caused the most problems on the trip, which I'll get to later. So the first thing we did with the 1915 was put tires on it, because our dream was we wanted to drive the 1915, which we didn't end up doing, but we really wanted to drive it back. So we were like, well, we can't drive it on wood. We need some wheels, some tires for it. So if you look closely at this picture, you can see the park brake, the service brake, split in two. So we didn't have another one, so we just left it off. And we're like, okay, don't hit the brakes. This is one of the right rear tire wheels that we just couldn't get off, and that's how we found out it's actually a lot easier to change clincher wheels when you just leave them on the car. That was the easiest tire to change. We struggled a lot with those tires because they were not new, they were new old. But then we got the 915 all buttoned up with the new tires, put the top up in case it would rain, because we were really optimistic about driving this car back. And then we had to get it running. So with some help from Luke Channel and Midnight Coil Repair, we put a new set of coils in it, and we messed with it for a while. We found out that the wiring for the timer was not right, so the firing order was off. And after we figured that out, we pull started it with the four-wheeler, and that's a little video of the first drive around, where we learned that it wouldn't shift into high gear. And we were like, okay, well, that's a problem. And we also learned that it wouldn't turn left. And we were like, it's not looking good for us. And then we pulled it back into the shop, and it just started pouring oil. And we had a bit of a late night thrash trying to figure out if we could see what was wrong with the steering, see if we could get it to go into high gear, see if we could get the oil leak to stop, and we didn't fix any of it. So we drove it onto the trailer, and I can tell you, it drove wonderfully onto the trailer. So yeah, there's a video of, and then that's when the rest of the crew showed up to the rest of our people that were going to drive it. That's just a really nice picture. We also took a lot of video during this trip, which I'll play kind of the highlight reel I put together at the end. So that's Nat, who's over here. He's in the back filming a shot. And this is the three cars right before we left. Everybody's all ready to go. We took a nice picture. So I want to talk for a minute about the people who went on this trip. There were 7 of us. Is the laser pointing? So this is Cash. This is Nat, who's here. We even say hi to Nat. This is my girlfriend, Hannah. This is Sean Whetstone, Thomas Tenser, me, and Ian Foster. And I think one of the coolest parts about this trip is, in this photo, before the trip, only one person knew how to drive a Model T and had ever driven a Model T before, and it was Cash. I got there, I drove a Model T for the first time, and it broke down immediately. And I was like, what did I do wrong? And he was like, oh, nothing, it just kind of dies sometimes. I was like, this is looking really good for us. But I think it's really cool that all of us got to do this despite knowing nothing, absolutely nothing about Model Ts. So day 1 looked a lot like this. Very empty, very straight roads. We know how Kansas is. And it also looked a lot like this. The T had and still has some running issues that I think are a result of a dirty gas tank and inadequate filtration, where it would just start running really rough. And I figured out if I turned the mixer screw all the way out and then all the way back in, it would start running fine. So most of the first day was like that, but we ended up having some fouled plugs that we replaced. But the main problem child was actually the Model A, because if you know about Model A's, they have the in-cowl gas tank, and it's really hard to get those clean. And we stopped a lot to clean that, and it had a lot of fuel starvation issues with that. But other than the issues, we were on the road, and it was just a lot of empty land and empty sky. It was really interesting. It was actually pretty beautiful. We all, towards the end of the trip, had come to a great appreciation of the plains for what they are. This is a stop we made in, I think, Colorado, at a friend's house that he knew of. Just thought it would be a cool photo opportunity. And this is the end of the first day. We didn't make it very far. We made it, I think, like 80 miles or something. Not as far as we'd wanted. We didn't get to where we were planning to camp both days, which was a bad idea. But we didn't make it to the campground we'd wanted, so we stopped for dinner, and we slept in a hotel that night, which I think was a good decision. And that night we also cleaned out the petcock on the fuel tank for the Model A. So the next day was more of the same. We kind of got a better groove in it. Then, since we had finally figured out exactly what the problem with the A was, we just had to every now and then stop and clean the lines out. More moving along the road. We made it to the Kansas state line, which was a good milestone. We were like, okay, we're finally getting there. Kind of with what Abby and Ellie were saying earlier. You're like, wow, this is taking forever, and then suddenly you're there. Make progress. This is the group at Kansas. We're all very happy to be back, even though it looks exactly the same. So yeah, spirits were pretty high the second day. That's Nat in the rumble seat, enjoying himself. The rumble seats are really fun. We were all really hoping we were going to drive the touring, so we all came with touring appropriate clothing, but so we made up for it by being in the rumble seat out in the cold. So this is the favorite part of the trip for all of us, I think. We were coming down and we wanted to take a shortcut. So we found a route that was a little shorter, and it was going to the state park we were going to stay at, which I think was Lake Scott State Park, which is beautiful. And it was like 20 or 30 miles of gravel. And this was the most desolate road I've ever been on. And it was awesome. You look at the horizon and there was absolutely nothing. And it was like so calm and peaceful, and it was on the gravel. And that was when we really most felt like we had traveled back to 1928 and we were driving our cars across the country. It was really fun. A little more what if it looked like from the driver's seat of the T. Just empty roads. It was really cool. This is Little Jerusalem State Park. It's known as the Kansas Badlands. It's really gorgeous. My favorite part is once you shut all the engines off and you're just standing out there, all you hear is the wind, and it's just so quiet. It's really beautiful. It was honestly a really nice break for us to like step back from like fast-moving world, everything's happening so much, stress of school, just all we have to worry about is these two cars getting where we need to be and looking at the landscape. So unfortunately, the T had some more running issues a couple miles from the park, and we were just sick of it, and we wanted to get the camp started. So we towed it a couple miles back, and we set up our campground. And camping is really fun. We cooked baked beans in the fire and all the fun camping stuff, but that was a very cold night.
Camping was very fun when you have a tent.
We set up a tent. The tent wasn't great. It was like drizzling the whole night. It was really cold. I didn't get any sleep. But it was really fun looking back on it. So the next day started out pretty good. It was a little dreary. More driving the T. Getting passed by semis is never fun in old cars. But
The Model T is a rip. If you get passed on one side by a truck, the whole thing tips over a little bit. A little terrifying.
this day was a little colder than the rest, but spirits were high as always. Nat keeping the group high. This is a great picture. I love this picture. And then it started raining, and it rained for like 4 hours. And a little lesson in simplicity is the T has the manual wiper that you just do with your hands, and the Model A has an electric wiper. Guess which one stopped working? It's an aftermarket electric wiper. And yeah, so at one point it got so bad that it was raining really hard, and I was in the T, and Nat was driving, and he was focusing on keeping it on the road, and I was focusing on keeping the windshield clear. But once the rain cleared up, it was really beautiful. Lots of gas station stops. We didn't keep track of fuel mileage, and we just figured we should stop as often as possible to avoid getting caught up a big hill, as if there would be one of those on our trip without enough gas. The last day, we didn't end up taking that many pictures or videos because we were just ready to get back. We really trucked it back on that day. This is, I think, near Lindsborg. This was our last stop for mechanical issues. We were just checking out the plugs and cleaning all the fuel bowls to make sure to get all the rocks out of them. But this was really on the home stretch. We were finally seeing land we were used to. And this is us in downtown Lindsborg, because Lindsborg is pretty, and I felt we should take a picture before the final stretch back to McPherson. And then I didn't take any more pictures because we got back, and we were like, I'm really tired, I'm going to bed. But this is we plotted our trip. We went about 490 miles. We probably went 500 with back and forth stuff. So we'll call it 500 miles in 3 days, which is certainly not a record for Model Ts, but for a bunch of people who had no idea what they were doing in cars that were totally unprepared, that's pretty good. And I want to say about the 26, which is a really fun car to drive. Not a great car to learn in, because when I learned on it, there was a lot of things that were actually wrong with it. The brake band is shot. Like, there are like no brakes. So like He's like, yeah, you can press the reverse band to slow down, but you probably shouldn't. I was like, I have no choice. And when you shifted it into high, the fingers on the clutches weren't adjusted quite right. So it would slip sometimes. And you'd just be like, well, did I do something wrong? I was like, no, not really. But it was such a great way to learn, and it was so fun. And it was really nice to teach everyone how to drive the T. We were able to learn that. This is a couple weeks later, Cash's cars all lined up in McPherson, all nice and running. We got the 15 running better with some help from Luke. Figured out the high gear adjustment. Found out that the reason it wouldn't turn left was there is a 90-degree bend in the steering arm. I don't know how that happens, but we put it in the big vise and straightened it out. Now it's fine. We later took that car on one of Paulson's mystery runs and did pretty well. It's been a lot of fun to drive around. We still drive them around. This is the last picture. I have a short video, and then I want to have Nat come up and we can answer questions. This is the
It's like the third stop in the last 10-15 minutes. I hope we don't have too many more of these. Yeah, that's not enough. That's fully on. Still stuck. Aha. Sorry. Hello. No, that's just blind. That will just be blind. That, yeah. Oh god, my hand's freezing. Oh. I don't want to put it on the seat. Back to cooking. We have a big hill. Kansas sign versus what? Like Colorado.
Stay going.
You don't want to because you don't.
Yeah, I think before I take some questions, I think just like my big takeaway from this is we took one person who really cared about Model Ts and 6 people who were like, okay, and we drove 500 miles, and after the trip, we're not all like, you know, peak Ford fans now, but before that we didn't care, and after that, we'd all love to own one, and we certainly love driving them. And I think it just shows that it's like, how important it is that you can't just show someone a car. You can't just tell someone about a car. They need to experience it to understand why you care about it. It's tight. It is kind of a problem when you get into like the more emergency panic situations. It's like, oh, is my foot gonna be sure? You know, people were shorter back then. And now you can come up for question time. If there's any more questions.
But to add to what Edwin was saying, this is so far outside of my wheelhouse. I'm really used to 70s, 80s, and 90s Japanese cars, and this is nothing like that. But when I heard about the idea, it took maybe 5 minutes of convincing before I was ready to do it, and it was amazing. It was one of the best trips I'd ever taken, and I'd totally do it again in a heartbeat.
Any other questions?
Along that line, how well did the seven of you know each other before you did this?
We were pretty good friends before that. We got to know each other a little better after, I'd say. For better or for worse.
There's a lot of roadside conversation while one or two people were working on the car, and the rest of us were just kind of watching.
So I'm assuming you guys weren't prepared to do that much fuel maintenance by the time you rolled into back into the school year.
Yeah.
Smell you rolling into the city limits?
Probably. Yes, especially the third day, because, the first night we stayed in the hotel and we could all shower. When we camped, we couldn't, and we had just, spent all day, draining the gas tank of the Model A and putting it all back together. And we were kind of sick of being dirty by then. But.
I don't think the skin on my hands will ever recover.
Yeah.
They ever let you drive? They ever let you drive? You were always in the back seat.
Oh, he drove.
Oh, I drove a lot. Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever driven a Model A or a T, and the Model A is harder to fit into. It's much smaller.
It is.
Interior space. But it was more familiar. With the Model T, you still have 3 pedals, but I had no idea what any of them did. And the first time I had done it, I had driven one. I'd gotten 4 hours of sleep the night before, and everybody was tired of driving the Model T. It was noisy and rattly, and you get about 30 miles per hour, it starts making a horrible noise. different. So I got in not knowing anything, but he helped me figure it out, and it's really fun. It's a super mechanical experience, like nothing I've ever really driven before. You can feel everything clunking into place and just barely getting to 30.
On the rattle, in that last picture, the one before Lindsborg in the middle of nowhere, that's where we found out that we had this really awful vibration over like 30, and it was the gas filler cap, the vent thing. We flipped that up and suddenly we could go 35 and it wouldn't shake. And then we found out that was bad because it started overheating. The radiator's a little plugged up. Again, we did not prepare very well.
A lot of questions, just a suggestion. ModelT days, there weren't so many roads. They kept me go out of the grassland or go on the side of the road and drive on the grass. Get off the asphalt.
All right.
It's totally different.
Yeah, for a route we were on 2-lane highways and gravel roads, but I'd love to drive on some grass.
Even if you just drive into the ditch and come back on the road.
A little bit of ditch.
See, you can do it. The A might not do it, but the T will do it.
We definitely did some ditch driving in the T.
A little bit.
Kind of by accident.
Yeah.
You get a lot of reaction from local people.
Yeah. Honestly, the most common reaction is just like people kind of frustrated because they had to pass like 4 vehicles going 35 miles an hour. But at gas stations and stuff, lots of people came up and took pictures and wanted to talk. When I drove both of these cars over here for this on Wednesday, which was like the warmest day of the week. It was 36 degrees, I think. That day more than any other, anytime someone saw me, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. It's freezing outside and you're in a Model T. We didn't really worry about it. We burned it all right away, so we didn't really worry about it.
Fuel mileage was good
I don't
enough.
know. Probably like 15.
It made it. We lost most of it on the Cowell road.
Is there a reason to get specifically go to casings and just get no ethanol fuel for the powertrain? Will you have issues with the nose of the lid?
I don't think so. I'm not the expert on that, but I will not answer any oil questions.
None of us will. I mean, I don't know. The question was about non-ethanol versus ethanol fuel. I don't know if, I mean, I can only share my experiences, and mine is I tend to drive my cars enough. If a car is going to sit for 6 months, I probably look for non-ethanol. I drive them enough that I go through it typically quick enough that knock wood hasn't bothered it yet. My experience only.
Yeah, I was about to say, in my experience,
Same as
ethanol
mine.
doesn't cause a problem running, but letting it sit for long enough, it causes problems.
And I'll say that goes for Model Ts only. Something with a more complicated carburetor like a Model A, you could have trouble quicker.
Just as a side note, I've got a lot of experience in the 57, 58, 59 tractor for Fairlands, and that Interceptor Special, I know my dad always said you have to have lead in the gas. You get some lead. We had to find lead in gas without any what we say. So I don't, it doesn't apply to all people.
Your results may vary.
Oh yeah, I guess I am. No, you're right.
Batteries are not included.
No, thank you. Any other questions for Edwin and Nat?
So what are you doing this year?
Nothing for certain yet. Cash and I have been talking about a slightly more late model cruise. He has take the 28A, and I have a 1929 Franklin that I'm working to get on the road. And we'd like to drive those down to Chickasha, swap meet for spring break is kind of our plan.
And I have a 1999
we'll see.
Honda Civic.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.